Hi everyone, Hadley here with Hillcrest Tennis. Today we are going to be discussing 10 tips to improve and make your serve a more effective serve. So I have 10 tips. We'll be counting down 1 to 10, starting with number 1. So number 1, keeping your eye on the ball as you hit. So one good drill you can do is as you hit, you keep your head up and then you can look down, but really keeping that head up as you watch, because if your head drops too soon, so do your shoulders, so does everything else. So really focusing on keeping that chin up and the eyes up to the ball as you hit, and then you're not going to be pulling down too much. So keeping that head up is a really good way to watch the ball. Okay, number 2 is the non-dominant hand. This is one of the more difficult concepts that a lot of people have to try and coordinate that non-dominant hand with your take back and with your contact. So really that non-dominant hand is it's really key. So if you think about it as as you come up, your left hand stays up and then your right hand kind of drags behind, and then once it gets to this position, now they're going to switch. So the right hand comes up and the left hand tucks underneath. Now the trick here is that the left hand doesn't pull to the side. The left hand must tuck to your belly. So really trying to focus on tucking it here, tuck it so that it doesn't pull everything down here. If it pulls down to your left hip, that's really going to drop your shoulders too soon, and then everything rotates too early, and now you get that slot machine motion coming here, so that's going to put a lot of pressure on your shoulder. So really trying to focus on keeping your left hand to tuck here, and it keeps you balanced, and it also keeps those shoulders up just a slightly longer. So really when you're out, if you come out to practice serves, really focus on tucking that left hand into your belly button and not off to the side like you're putting your hand in your pocket. We don't want that. Okay, number three, the toss. To me, one of the most important principles of the toss is that it comes from the hinge in your shoulder, not from your elbow or your wrist. So this is the joint that's important, not your elbow and not your wrist. Okay. So one thing I like to think about is your motion on your toss is you really have to focus on when you toss, keeping your arms straight and your wrists still, and holding it in your fingers. Okay, so it's nice and light. All right, and so when you go to toss straight up to straight down to straight up, creating a line between the ball, your arm, and your body here. So thinking nice and still, and it's nice and smooth. It's about all one motion, not too fast at the release, making sure it's nice and smooth and controlled on that toss, and keeping that arm nice and straight and nice and soft in your fingers. Don't death grip and don't cup. Okay, nice and easy in your fingers. Okay, and that will help your toss become more consistent. One drill we like to do with our juniors is we like to have them stand up against the back fence, and we like to have them toss, because the toss can't go too far out in front and it can't go behind them. So it's a visual, because they have to toss in that straight line. And so that's a nice little drill for you to be able to do in a nice visual. And your release is the same speed. So it's all one smooth motion. Okay, so number 4, we're going to discuss the footwork, okay? So there's 2 options here. So you can stand with your feet apart and then come in, or you can bring your feet together. Now, okay, so bringing your feet together this way, there's pros and cons to both. When you have your feet apart, okay, you can really load your body here, but the tendency is a lot of people don't tend to use that load as much as they can. So really trying to make sure that you load your body and then you go to hit. Now the footwork with the coming together, this is super important to remember that you don't want to come around, okay? You want your feet to come to kind of together, but you still need to keep your hips facing sideways. So there. So a lot of people like to do it because they get really turned and they get more load. But the tendency is if your foot comes around too much, then the tendency is you open up too soon, and then you have that, again, that slot machine motion, and you don't have, you lose your power and also your control, and the ball will either float too wide or it'll go straight into the net. And then you start using you start to muscle it rather than using your whole body, and that you lose that natural throwing motion. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the wrist motion up, okay? So a lot of players tend to lose the wrist motion up, and so it's really flat as they hit, and so it tends to make them hit it too low. So one drill I like to do is I like to have them start in this position, okay, and then it's toss, and then they have to swing up and hit the bottom of the ball. So it teaches you that you have to get the wrist up, and it gets that racket head to come up and over the top. It also helps you achieve a higher contact point, and so you're not hitting it too low, because the tendency is to hit it here, and now that ball has no way of coming back down into the court. So if you can get that higher contact, you're going to be able to get that ball to drop down into the court. You get a little bit more racket head speed, and then you also in turn get more speed and therefore have more of an effective serve. So now we're going to talk about number 6. Your serve has a rhythm, and so trying to find your rhythm is extremely important. So there's 3 stages within the serve. So there's 1, 2, 3. Okay, so really 1 should be slow, 2 and 3 you should accelerate as you're transitioning between 2 and 3. All right, so we'll count it out. So it should be 1, 2, 3, and it should be 1, 2, 3. And so you should really, as you're transitioning from 2 to 3, it should accelerate and it shouldn't be slowing down. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So thinking about those stages and trying to get that 1, 2, 3. And that's your rhythm as you hit. You want to accelerate the racket head as you're transitioning into 3. Okay, so now we're going to move into number 7. Okay, and we're going to talk about grip. So a lot of beginners will use the Eastern grip. So this would be the Eastern grip right about there. Okay, and typically we call this the frying pan grip. So, you know, if you're a chef, you're kind of shaking the frying pan, you're gonna flip the egg or flip the pancake. But really we want to, if you've been playing for quite some time, you really want to be trying to move into that continental grip, which you should already be using for your volleys and your overheads. But the continental grip is like the hammer grip. So if you're going to go and hammer, okay, and so the disadvantage with the Eastern grip is your racket or your string, the ball will follow where your strings go. So the ball is going to have really no drop to it. It's just going to have some side spin. And so if you're trying to change from Eastern to Western, the tendency is the ball is going to float. It's going to go into the net if you start right off from Eastern to Continental. So the thing of it is you really want to think about swinging out and around a little bit more. So you want to swing around it so that your strings kind of flatten out and you get that pronation on the ball. Okay, so I would encourage you, if you're using that Eastern grip and you're really wanting to improve your serve, work on using that continental grip. You're gonna get more racket head speed, you're gonna get more spin and pace on that ball. Okay, so next, number 8, we're going to talk about shoulder rotation. So typically what happens with a lot of recreational players is they step up to a ball or to the line and they're too square already. But we really need to make sure that you get that rotation, and that's where that stance and that footwork comes into play. You know, making sure that your toe is at an angle and that you're going to get that rotation. So one drill we like to do is having people step up to the line and you're going to be square, and this is going to teach you that you have to get the rotation on your serve. So you get this turn, rotate. So over exaggerates the turn. All right. So that shoulder rotation is also that's going to keep your shoulders up a little bit longer. And because if you think about it, just like what we talked about earlier, is if that shoulder rotates too soon, then now everything kind of pulls down and you lose a lot of power, and then you put a lot of pressure on your shoulder. Okay. All right. Number 9. We're going to talk about serving with power. There are a lot of power sources when it comes to serving. You know, there's, your hips, your legs, your shoulders, your arm, those kinds of things. But really, when it all comes down to it, the ball will only go as fast as your racket head is accelerating. So, if you're slowing down at contact, the ball is only going to go as fast as your racket is accelerating or decelerating. So if you want to serve with more power, your racket tip has to be moving faster at a faster rate. So it has to accelerate at the point of contact. And again, the faster your racket head is accelerating, the faster the ball will move. It has nothing to do with how strong you are. It has everything to do with how you can get that racket to accelerate. And then it's all about coordinating your all of your power sources. So coordinating your legs, your hips, your shoulders, and then your arm as well. So if you can if you can coordinate all of your everything here, you can get the racket to accelerate at a faster rate. Okay. And one last tip in regards to throwing or serving with power is the better thrower you are, the better server you will be. So if you want to get better at serving, you better be a better thrower. And so throwing a football, I remember in college, we would always throw footballs to warm up our serve, throwing over the net, throwing with your kids, anything to improve that motion, because you just want to make sure when you're practicing is you want to get into this position here. So this throwing motion and getting the weight transfer here. That's what we're looking for. Over the top. And throwing, and again, coordinating all of your power sources from the ground up. Okay. And lastly, number 10 is having a routine. So if you watch all of the top players in the world, all the way down to a lot of junior players, sectionally and nationally, they all have a routine. So for me, my routine is I bounce it 1, 2, 3, and then I always make sure that I set. And I always look at where I'm going to serve. I briefly glance, and then I set, and then I go. So having a routine, whatever that is, you bounce it 5 times, that's fine. But every time, whether it's a first or a second serve, or if a ball rolls on your court, reset, start that routine over again, because that routine will help just create that rhythm. And the more you can have that rhythm and that consistency, the more comfortable you'll become hitting your serve, and will help across the board. So anyway, those are my tips for creating a more effective serve. Be on the lookout for some of our fall programs. They're starting September 14th, and we look forward to seeing you all down here at the tennis courts. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.